Jane Austen's works were published anonymously. People did not know that it was written by a woman. People did not assume that the books were written by women. Why? Because they weren't silly little romances, Colin Bridgerton. They weren't silly little romances, Shonda Rhimes, Julia Quinn. Do you know what Jane Austen's books were that were published anonymously? They were deep looks into society. They were looks at what it really meant to be a part of society, at class structure, at the concept of being human, at family life, at life around other people. These are books, especially Emma, that aren't just about finding love. It's about figuring out how to grow as a human being. And to just kind of call them silly romances written for girls is to take away everything that Jane Austen did for literature. And I'm not even mad at Colin Bridgerton for saying it, because I'm mad at the people who wrote the show who didn't bother to do a modicum of research.
Cressida Cowper is madly in love with Eloise Bridgerton, and I would actually argue that I think that she's been secretly in love with her the entire show. Do I think that she knows it? No, it's a secret even from herself. But the number one reason that I think this is because who has Eloise's best friend been since the beginning? Penelope Featherington. And who has Cressida Cowper been meaner to than anyone else on the show, basically? Penelope Featherington. And it's giving Regina George. Regina George loves to be mean to people, specifically to women. And she's mean to people, specifically women, because she's gay. And, like, do we have proof of that? No, because Tina Fey is biphobic and homophobic and hates people and women and blah, blah. I could go on forever. I should probably take that part out, but I'm probably not going to. But Regina George is fully lesbian coded, specifically mean girl who doesn't know that she's gay, but does know that she secretly has these thoughts about women. And because she secretly has these thoughts about women, she worries that every other woman will know that she has these thoughts, so she goes out of her way to ruin reputations before they're ever given a chance to discover her big, terrible secret. And that is what Cressida Cowper does, but Cressida Cowper takes it another step further, which is that she specifically means the best friend of the girl that she's kind of trying to woo, and she has been trying to woo since the first season, which was not Eloise's season, mind you. It was only Penelope's season, and Cressida was like, why are you friends with this girl when you could be friends with me? you could be friends with me. And then season 3 comes around. Cressida is still going out of her way to be mean to Penelope Featherington, but now she has the excuse of, well, you and Penelope are no longer friends. But I guess you're right. Penelope is totally beneath us. Penelope is beneath us. And meanwhile, we have these photos of Eloise and Cressida together, specifically this photo where Penelope is walking down the stairs and Eloise looks for a moment very happy that her best friend, her ex-best friend, looks so beautiful and so lovely. And Cressida, you cannot tell me that the face that Cressida is wearing is not the face of someone not who's jealous of Penelope because other men might see her, but specifically because Eloise might see Penelope. So I say that Cressida and Eloise have always been secretly in love. Well, Cressida's been secretly in love with Eloise the entire time. Eloise has had no idea. And Cressida's had no idea that she's in love with Eloise. She just knows that she really, really, really wants Eloise Bridgerton's attention more than anything in the entire world, ever. And she will go out of her way to ruin Penelope's life to get it, and therefore, I will never forgive her. I won't forgive her. She will not be forgiven by me, but I do understand. I see where she's coming from. I like that they're giving her a backstory. I do appreciate all that they've done this season, but I will never forgive her. And I'll also never forgive Eloise. But I will begin to like them again, which is the best I can do. Okay, thank you, bye.
I believe deep down in my soul that when Colin was saying I would never dream of courting Penelope Featherington, in his head, he thought that everyone would understand that there was, like, more to what he was saying. Like, I really think that he assumed that other people would also be thinking, like, that same thought process. And this might just be me having wishful thinking, but it really felt in the way that Luke Newton was playing this character, in the way that he was saying the line, it really felt like there was, like, this addendum to it. Like, he's like, I would never dream of courting Penelope Featherington. Like, she's my best friend. I would never dream of courting Penelope Featherington. She would never have me. I would never dream of courting Penelope Featherington. How could I be, like, worthy of her? And he treats it like a joke because he thinks, I really think in the moment that he kind of thinks of himself as the joke. Like, that's how I saw it. And I could be wrong. And please don't tell me if I'm wrong, because I really like how I see it. I really enjoy how I see it, because I think I see it in such a nice, lovely way. But yeah, no, I think that the new season of the show did try and show us how Colin, like, changed and grew, and they use his, like, friends to, like, prove that. And I respect that, and I understand that they're trying to show, oh, he's so different than he was last season, but I'm actually like, but what if he's always been this way? What if he's always been this way? I don't know. Am I team throuple and challengers? Yes. Do I think that Tashi actually actively continuously chose Art? Also yes. And two things can be true. Okay, I did 3 by accident, but it's 2. 2 things can be true. Because here's the thing. Did Tashi end up with Patrick first? Yes, she did. She did end up with Patrick first, but why? Because she went, I'm not a homewrecker, so I will just date whoever wins the tennis game tomorrow. I want to see some good tennis. That's what I want to see. And Patrick ended up winning. But Art was like, oh man, I'm screwed. I'm totally screwed. I'm never going to win. And Tashi went, you can beat him, Art. And here's the thing. Tashi met both boys at the same time, and she went, oh, Art, you're going to Stanford? I'm going to Stanford too. Yeah, when I got my acceptance, they, like, had mentioned you. They mentioned that you were going to Stanford. And Art fits everything that Tashi actually wants, okay? He's a good tennis player, but not only is he a good tennis player, he actually continuously strives to be a better tennis player. And the number one thing that Patrick doesn't do is try to be better at anything. And we see that the most because this is a boy who comes from wealth, who comes from extravagance, who comes from so much. And he is driving a clunker, he's playing poverty, and he is, like, thriving in the fact that he's just, like, this poor tennis player. He's so poor, and he's still continuously trying to tell Art that they're equals. They're equals because they came from the same place. But here's the thing. Art is one of the best tennis players in the entire world. Not even the most avid tennis fan would know who Patrick is. And that's because Art is continuously striving to be better, and he would have continuously strived to be better even if he hadn't gotten Tashi Duncan, because he just wants to be good at what he does, whereas Patrick literally rides on talent. Now, back to why I think that Tashi Duncan was gonna choose Art anyways. Because when Patrick tells Tashi that she hates Art, the second time I watched it, I saw this change in the way that Zendaya was playing the character, where it's not horror at having been found out and called out for hating her husband. No, it's not that at all. It's horror that Art might think that too, because she didn't realize that maybe Art was only playing tennis at this point for her. So she goes home and Art is like, oh, just so you know, I'm going to tell you something and you're going to be mad, but I want this to be my last year playing tennis, even if I don't win the Open. And she's like, and Tashi goes, okay, you don't have to ask my permission for this. And she, now that I'm rewatching, now that I did the rewatch, actually meant it. I know with my entire soul that she actually meant it. And then Art goes, I know that I'm playing for the both of us. And Tashi's soul breaks because she thinks that she and Art are on the same page. And then he says, I'm playing for both of us. I've never missed that. And her entire soul breaks and her heart breaks. And she's like, what can I do to make him see that I'm choosing him? And she does the wrong thing. She says, if you lose tomorrow, I'll leave you. Is that what you want to hear? Is that what you need to hear to win, to beat Patrick? Because this entire movie has really been about Art beating Patrick, but also Art and Patrick becoming equals in a separate way. But also not equals because Art... There's so much. There are so many nuances to this film. There are so many nuances, but I think specifically that Tashi decided to sleep with Patrick to save her marriage with Art.
And yeah, it ended up working so they become a throuple, but like mostly it was to save her marriage with her husband, whom she loves, even if she accidentally just plays a game of tennis in their relationship every time that they're together, because that's all she knows, because all she knows and all she is tennis. It's such a good movie. Okay, bye.
When the Apple of Discord was thrown into the wedding of that one king and the three, like, major goddesses of that time, Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena, were going at it and being like, I'm the fairest, I'm the fairest, I'm the fairest, because the apple said that was for the fairest, so they were, like, battling about who was the fairest and whatever, and they're like, Zeus, you choose who's fairest. Zeus, you choose. Zeus couldn't have said, my wife is obviously the fairest, for like 3 reasons. I don't actually know if it's 3 because this is all off the top of my head. But one is that he famously cheats on his wife as if it is his job. He's the king of the gods, but he treats cheating on his wife as his main position in life. 2, Athena is his daughter, and she literally was axed out of his head. So, like, you'd think that he'd kind of want to choose his daughter, who's literally just more him than anyone else, as the fairest. And 3, Aphrodite is the goddess of beauty. I'm actually very proud of myself that it was actually 3. But yeah, so he couldn't have just said, oh, obviously my wife Hera is the fairest, because Athena, who's the goddess of wisdom and is super wise and super logical at all times, would have gone, oh, well, if your wife is so fair, why do you cheat on her all the time, father? Do you actually think she's the fairest, father? Or are you trying to cop out on us, father? Tell the truth, father. And that might not have worked as well as it could have. So, like, honestly, tossing the apple over to Paris and being like, here, kid, you choose. I'll let you ruin your own life. I'm not ruining mine, was the smartest thing Zeus could have done. And I hate defending Zeus. Because, like, he cheats on his wife a lot. And he's always gross about it. How was Daphne Bridgerton supposed to have any idea that Simon actually liked her when literally, he would rather die. He would rather die than marry her. Not only would he rather die than marry her, he knew, like, everyone knew that it would ruin her if instead of marrying her, he went into battle with her brother, and he still decided to do it because he was always thinking more about himself than he was about anyone else in the situation. And so is Antony, but in a completely different way, where Antony was always like, I think I'm doing the right thing. This is definitely what my dad would have done, but Antony is a fucking moron. And he grows, and he learns, and we can try and forgive him for that. But Simon was just like, I'm gonna show my dad who's boss. He's gonna roll over in his grave under the ground because he's dead, and I am just gonna not get married and ruin this perfectly nice young woman who has actually been actively helping me and who I'm falling in love with, and I'm gonna ruin her life forever. Or die trying. And she had to beg him. She had to beg him to marry her. She had to beg. She had to chase, and she had to beg, and then they had to get married as quickly as possible. And yeah, fuck him. Like, they're the most toxic couple ever. Like, just the most toxic couple. But, like, I'm ignoring the thing that should never have been written into the plot because it was stupid. And I guess I'm mad at him because he's stupid. Okay, bye.
But the season of Bridgerton actually did such a great job at making me start by finally, like, liking Eloise Bridgerton, but not only just liking Eloise Bridgerton, respecting Eloise Bridgerton, because I'd always had trouble with that in the past, because it's really hard. It's really difficult for me to read books where characters are so clearly written in the 21st century in the way that Eloise Bridgerton feels like she is written, because so many of the ways that she's going about her thoughts and her emotions and her concepts of what feminism is and should be don't feel like the way that a girl at her level in her world at that time period would behave and would feel and would act. And sometimes it can drive me really, really, really nuts because it reminds me of, like, 60-year-old feminist teachers who are like, have disdain for their students who are too girly, who are cheerleaders, who are in sororities. That type of teacher, I had a couple of them. And that's always how Eloise had felt to me. And because of that, it's so hard to like Eloise Bridgerton. But this season really maybe we should have Eloise look in a goddamn mirror. Maybe we should have Eloise, I don't know, start thinking about the privilege that she has and the way that she treats people, especially the way that she treats her supposed best friend, Penelope Featherington. And let's think about all the ways that she's kind of hurt Penelope in the past without realizing it. And let's all make this because Eloise starts realizing that she's a lesbian and in love with Cressida Cowper. I don't know if that was a well done sound effect or not, but I don't even care because that's how I felt. That's how I felt. I was just like, what? No. While watching the show and going, oh, Eloise is like befriending Cressida partially to protect Penelope from Cressida. But at the same time, Eloise is befriending Cressida because she knew it would be the number one meanest thing that she could do to her ex-best friend. And on top of that, Eloise is yelling at Cressida for being a bad person, and Cressida is calling her out for being a bad person right back. Because if Cressida Cowper is cruel out loud to your face, Eloise Bridgerton is cruel behind your back very openly to anyone else who will listen. And now Eloise is starting to see that. And it's so exciting. Except judging by what they're doing in the second half of this season from the trailer, I am going to scream and not forgive her ever again. But like, Eloise and I are getting closer while I actively get angry at her for existing. So like, yeah.
I mean, a large part of the answer is that Eloise just isn't actually that much of a feminist right now. Like, I actually think that Eloise entering into a world of women and learning to respect women as actual human beings for their interests, for liking embroidery, for wanting to get married, for seeing what marriage can actually do for women and how it can help women in this time period. When women really don't have choices, especially women in the ton who do not have the ability to work or to get jobs. And if they did work or did get a job, they would never be allowed back into the society that they want to be a part of. I think Eloise actually figuring out that she's gay and figuring out that she wants to be with women and figuring out that she is in love with a woman who actually very much is a part of the society that Eloise has always been so against. Like a society where women don't have choices and don't have power unless they are married, unless they have a man in their lives, which Eloise has always had multiple men in her lives. Even if she lost all three of her older brothers, Gregory would still be there to keep the title and keep things up. And that's a big deal. And that's a big part of Eloise's life and why she is so, women deserve more than just caring about embroidery. And it's a big reason why she can feel that way. But it's not feminism. It's not feminism, because a large part of feminism is believing that men and women are equal and believing that women deserve choices for what they want to be and do in their lives. And Eloise has never believed that women are actually choosing this. She believes that they're all brainwashed. All of them. Continuously. Her sister, Penelope, Cressida, all of them. And it's not until Cressida and her have started talking this season that Eloise has actually started to listen to another person's perspective.
The thing that I think season 3 of Bridgerton actually really did for us is show exactly how blind everyone is to the mistreatment of Penelope Featherington, especially the way that her own family mistreats her. And I think it's so brilliant because it even shows us how we, as the audience, had no idea Penelope Featherington was being so ignored, so verbally abused, so hurt by her own family on a daily basis, to the point that she'd try and tell her mother she was going somewhere, and her mother would be like, can't you see we're busy? And And it's like, you know that if Penelope hadn't told her mother where she was going, there are two options. Her mother would either get super duper mad at her for having left the house without permission, or her mother would never have realized that she was gone. And that is awful. That is terrible. And I'm bringing this up because if we, as the audience who knows that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, the audience who really gets to see and has gotten to see for the past 2 seasons how poorly Penelope's been mistreated by her family, by her friends, by the ton. If we didn't realize how bad it was, how could Eloise Bridgerton have known how bad it was? And that's something that never hit me until this season. That's something that probably never would have hit me until this season. Because the thing is, it always feels like Eloise is just like purposefully ignoring the way that Penelope is hurt by her family and is mistreated by her family and is mistreated by the ton and by Eloise herself. And then I started realizing that Penelope is actually using Eloise much in the same way that Eloise is using Penelope. And when I say using, I mean that there's a certain level of using that I think every friendship has, and it makes you feel guilty when it's happening, but I think that friends use each other in the same way that they need each other. And Penelope is using Eloise to feel the love of a real family. Penelope doesn't fully want Eloise to know the mistreatment that Penelope has to live through every single day when she is at home. Penelope doesn't want Eloise, doesn't want the Bridgertons to see that side of her. Because if they see that side of her, there will stop being this, oh, Penelope, you're so lovely, you're so sweet, you're so kind, you're so smart side of things, and it will start being a pitying experience. And Penelope doesn't want that. And it's the first time I've ever really been given the chance to forgive Eloise for this, because while if Eloise had been paying attention, she might have noticed a bit more of the way that Penelope is mistreated and why Penelope might want to, might want to get married and might want to like go off, and why Penelope is always a wallflower because she's never given the chance to do more. But at the same time, Eloise never would have been fully given the chance to see what Penelope is going through because Penelope didn't want anyone to see what she's going through, which is often the thing that happens and the thing that abuse victims go through, because Penelope is an abuse victim. She is an emotional abuse victim. And Penelope wouldn't want people to know that because she can't escape, so she would just be looked on with pity. No one would be able to help her, and then she would lose the one thing that she really has, which is Bridgerton tea. And then she lost it anyways because of everything that goes down with Eloise. But it's so interesting and it's so neat and it's so cool. And I could talk about it so much more because this was so well done. Okay, thank you, bye. Bridgerton, Eloise is talking to a bunch of the girls who are like all out in society and so happy to be out. And they start discussing embroidery. And one of them is so excited about it. She's so excited about embroidery. She has so many favorite stitches. She has so much that she could discuss with it because it's really important to her. It's something that she takes really seriously. It is her talent. And all of the other girls, or like not all the other girls, but a bunch of the other girls are like tagging and like, oh yeah, I like the French stitch, I like this stitch. And one of them like asks, Eloise, what's your favorite stitch? Like just trying to bring Eloise a bit more into the conversation. And Eloise goes, I like the switch stitch. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that stitch. And how exciting must it be for a bunch of girls who love embroidery, who love this hobby, who love this craft that they do. How exciting would it be to hear about a new stitch? And they're like, tell me about this stitch. You're like, what is this stitch? I've never heard of it. And Eloise goes, well, it's where you switch the subject. And you can like see the hurt in the girl's eyes, and like it's supposed to be like this moment where Eloise is like, oh, I just don't fit in, I'm so bad. And it's like, ma'am, you are not trying to fit in. This was not you trying to fit in. This was you being biting. That was a biting piece of humor that Penelope would have laughed at because Penelope wanted you as a friend, and Cressida would laugh at because Cressida wants you as a friend. But people who do not know you particularly well are not going to think that this thing where you're just like, I want to change the subject to anything else other than embroidery. Embroidery is so stupid. How dumb. Embroidery is so gross. I hate it. And you can tell because the girl's like, oh, how clever. Because she can't be outright mean. Because you can't be outright mean in Bridgerton. You have to do it in like these little ways. These little biting ways. But no one's gonna bite against Eloise if they can help it, because she is a Bridgerton and she does have a lot of power, and they do have a lot of favor with the Queen. Even if Eloise had almost been cancelled or cut out or whatever it was in the previous season, she does still have all this power and all this, like, respect of the ton. And she takes it and she wastes it. And she's like, I just don't want to talk about embroidery. Can we talk about anything else? Like, let's talk about anything else. And, like, it's not funny and it's not cute. Like, it's funny technically in that Eloise is a very joking person and she didn't mean it to be mean. But just because you didn't mean something to be mean doesn't mean that it's not mean, especially if everyone else is like enjoying this thing and enjoying discussing this thing that young ladies are taught in this society to like and to appreciate and to do and to find importance in. And Eloise is just like, I don't get it. Am I supposed to get it? I don't get it. And you know that if Eloise were in the 21st century, she would kind of have that voice of like, I don't get it. Am I supposed to understand? Because I don't. Sorry. Anyways, I do love Eloise and I love the growth that she has had this season. But I need someone to smack some sense into her about embroidery, because the biggest part of it is that it seems like the Bridgerton writers actually don't know and don't think that there's importance in embroidery. So that's why it keeps being embroidery that is brought up in this subject and in this discussion. And it hurts me. Okay. It's really hot out. I'm gonna go put my AC on now.
The embroidery, it's about the fact that Eloise is actively trying to change the subject in the meanest way possible. She is in a group of 5 women, and all of those women are actively, happily talking about embroidery because they're actually genuinely interested. And when Eloise is given the chance to join in this conversation, she could have said anything. Oh, I don't know much about embroidery. Embroidery isn't really my thing. Anything. And she goes for the most cutting thing to break down the person across from her who's so genuinely excited. And it's the first time that we actually get to see her be excited and be happy, except for when Lady Whistledown talked about her, who's so glad that they're talking about embroidery because she really knows how to discuss embroidery. And Eloise decides to change the subject, and there's changing the subject like, oh, I don't really know about like that much about embroidery. Could we like change the could we change the subject? Maybe. Instead, she decides to go for the way that will get a laugh, for the way that people will like laugh, and she's like, and they'll laugh at me. No. You made everyone else in that group, especially the girl who was super duper excited, feel a little stupid and a little belittled and a little dumb. And that's what's wrong with that situation. It's mean. She was being mean. She was being a 13-year-old girl who's going, well, what was I supposed to do? Lie? Yes. In social situations, there are times where decorum is called for, where you just need to fake it for a second. You fake it. You don't care about embroidery? Oh, well, this person's talking about embroidery. Smile and nod. Smile and nod. All you have to do is smile and nod and go, oh, wow, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'm so glad that you genuinely find interest in this. It's so easy. It's so simple. And Eloise purposefully at this point doesn't do it because she never had to, because Penn would let Eloise change the subject. Everyone in Eloise's family just lets Eloise go along with it. And it's mean. She's being mean. She's being mean. And when you're in social situations, you have to be willing to just pretend to care. When you are with your best friend in the world and they like K-pop and you don't, and they want to tell you all about this one K-pop band, you have to fake it for a second because they fake it for you. It's quid pro quo, and Eloise was not quitting or proing or quoing. We're never going to leave behind the I'm not like other girls character because it's such a great starting off point for so many other characters. So while we are in a time period where being not like other girls is not like the end all be all of winning feminism that we think it is, or that we used to think it was, now it's a better opportunity for people to grow, and that's what we're actually getting with Eloise Bridgerton this season, like very much, because here's the thing. Eloise Bridgerton is neurodivergent. Yes, when we look at her sister Francesca, we see someone who's much more clearly neurodivergent and like not great in social situations, very shy, has one interest, doesn't really know how to talk to people, but has figured it out along the way. Yes, we got that with Francesca, but we also are getting it with Eloise in a completely separate way, because Eloise has one interest, doesn't understand why anyone would not want to discuss her one interest, doesn't understand why people would want to discuss their interest, because their interests are not as interesting as her interest. She is Dina from Superstore. And what did Dina from Superstore really manage to do over the course of 6 seasons? Grow as a person. And when it specifically happened, it's because she had brought a new friend into her life, Amy. And Eloise has brought Cressida Cowper into her life. And I know what you're thinking, like, well, Cressida Cowper is a mean girl, Jack. Yes, but Cressida Cowper is a mean girl, because she's gay. So she hates women because she feels like she has to, because otherwise someone will discover her secret. But B, she's a mean girl because she was raised by a mean girl. She was raised literally to not be nice to other women. The one that time that she tried to be nice to someone, it was to Eloise, and my allergies are coming up and my nose is getting really stuffy. It was to Eloise, and Eloise said, I'd rather die than be your friend. So the fact that Eloise is now becoming Cressida's friend, we're seeing the fact that Cressida is really trying to soften her cruelty towards others, specifically towards Penelope. Does she still think that Penelope isn't worthy of being a human being? Yes, which, like, I'd really like to discuss why Penelope is written the way that she is, because in earlier seasons it was, like, clear that she wasn't as pretty, but now she's absolutely stunning, and everyone's still like, why would anyone pay attention to you? You're just the worst of the ton. And I'm like, but could someone explain to me how? Because it's not even that she's plus-sized anymore, because there are plus-sized girls in the ton. But anyways, my point was that Eloise and Cressida are becoming friends, and Eloise and Penelope were never friends. Eloise and Penelope are siblings. They have a sibling dynamic, and that's actually how they're going to get back together in their friendship later. But Eloise being friends with Cressida and also trying to start befriending all these other girls in the ton and doing it wrong is how she's going to change and grow, because she's finally going to see the issue that she was never able to see with her family, because her family wouldn't correct her on that, because her family loves her, with how she's been treating other people and their interests. And because of that, she's growing and changing. And it's all starting very specifically with the fact that she's entertaining now. She's a good entertainer. And when she entertains, who does she talk about? Herself. She mocks herself continuously. She's not mocking other people. She's not a stand-up comedian who talks about how other people are losers. No, she looks inside and she laughs at herself. And all these other girls are going to see how she can laugh at herself and see what her humor is. And then they'll understand when she's trying to be funny when she's not being funny, that there will be a change there, and she'll be able to bring herself more fully into being like other girls and being friends with the girls who are like other girls. And it's a really big deal. It's so exciting. I actually think it's so unique, and I'm excited. I love it. Okay, bye. The abuse that Penelope goes through in public is nothing compared to the abuse that Cressida goes through. And Penelope never shares any of it with Eloise, and that's such a big part of it, because you do not believe that someone is capable of it. You do not believe that someone is capable of it. You never believe it, okay? And it's very hard, because if the person that you love is being abused, specifically like emotionally abused, it's invisible. Even if it's directly in front of you, even if the mom is being mean to her directly in front of you, if your friend isn't saying anything, if your friend isn't telling you, oh, my mom is the worst, she'll just go, my mom's having a bit of a day, it's fine, and you believe her. Because what else are you going to say? What else are you going to think? Oh, this is so much worse at home. This is terrible. This is the worst thing that she's going through every single day, and I'm just purposefully not noticing because I don't want to know. That's what it is, but you're not going to think that because no one wants to believe that abuse is happening.
I'm actually going to hold today's standards of humanity and being a person to what Bridgerton writes, because Bridgerton was written in today's times. Bridgerton is a set in the 1800s, sure, but not in a realistic way, not in a way where they have to follow every historical rule. Do you know how much makeup they put on Penelope and Francesca alone this season? That's not historically accurate. So when I say that Eloise was being mean and a little biting, and I can't wait for her to really start learning and coming through as a new adult human being who realizes that other people have feelings, and it will all be because of the way that she's realized that she's good at entertaining, but mainly only if she's entertaining by mocking herself and not mocking others, which is what she's been prone to do for the past 2.5 seasons. When I say that, and when I say that Eloise, when talking about embroidery to these other girls who were very excitedly talking about their passion, which is embroidery, because Eloise doesn't think it's good enough for women to like, because Eloise only likes important things, but the important things that she likes actually bores the women that she talks to, and they still listen when she talks, because that's the polite thing to do in society. That's not Eloise being radical. That's Shonda Rhimes and Julia Quinn and the rest of the writers' room thinking, this is what they want, this is what will be good, and I actually have nothing but faith in how they're writing her glow up as a character so far, because this is going to be Eloise's lowest point before she starts really coming up and becoming more of a person and an adult person and a person who respects the fact that other people have feelings in the next season and a half before her turn. But I don't have to hold Eloise to yesterday's standards of what it means to be a woman and a woman supporting woman and what it means to be a feminist, because A, that term wasn't invented yet. B, Eloise wasn't a feminist anyways. And C, this show was written today. It came out a month ago. It was written by modern people with modern thinking who are purposefully bringing a lot of modern things into the show and following mild rules of Regency romance, but not all of them, not most of them, and I'm fine with that. I'm good with that. And because I'm fine and good with that, I'm not gonna say, oh, I'll hold Eloise to the standards that I would hold Jane Eyre. A, because Jane Eyre would never do what Eloise did. Elizabeth Bennet would never do what Eloise did. Jo March would do what Eloise did, but only to her sister Amy. Not to random strangers that she just started talking to. You know? You get me? You feel me? So, no. Thank you. It's not radical. She's not being radical. She's just being a jerk. Bye.
Why is Eloise making that face? Why is Eloise making that face? Why is Eloise all of a sudden looking very uncomfortable being Cressida's friend? Why is Eloise all of a sudden oh, hi, Cressida, when the entire season she's been very comfortable with Cressida, and now we're going to part 2, and all of a sudden you're showing this new clip of Eloise and Cressida together, and Cressida's all over Eloise, and Eloise is just why? Why? Tell me now. Tell. I can take it. I can handle it. It'll be fine. But if Eloise's entire second half of the season is going to be her being Penelope, you have to tell Colin that you're Lady Whistledown, or else I'll tell him you have until the stroke of midnight, young lady. And Cressida's I'm going to find who Lady Whistledown is so I can get the money from the Queen and to have bank so I don't have to marry some man my father married me off to. And Penelope's just over there fainting somewhere in Colin's arms, which thank you very much for that, and the trailer has been keeping me alive. Why is Eloise making that face about her supposed new best friend? What?
Do you ever think about how close we actually are to the beginning of the timeline of everything? I mean, I grew up during a time where a lot of the media I consumed was post-apocalyptic, and there was a lot of discussion around all of the things that led up to where we are now, and how close we are to the end of it all. But humans have been here for such a pitifully short amount of time, and there's no way that we can conceptualize the billions of years that happened prior to our existence. And how many lives were lived and lost before the first person that we know to be a human took its first breath? How many things had to happen to the planet in order for those conditions to be met for life to exist in the first place? It just makes me wonder, like 4 billion years in the future, is there going to be a bunch of new space dust in the atmosphere that has led to the creation of entirely new species and life forms? Will our existence even be known about to them? Will we have any recorded history because it was so digitized? Will archaeologists one day dig up an ancient iPad and be like, ooh, this was a tablet that they used to write on to communicate, and then like get all of our history wrong and then repeat the whole process all over again? Like, has it already happened before and we just don't know because we're, like, honestly, we are smart. We're humans and we're smart, but we're also incredibly stupid. And I feel like there are so many mysteries that we have not yet unlocked. I found all those ancient scrolls a few days ago, and now we know what Plato was doing when he died. We didn't know that a few days ago. That's fascinating. What else are we gonna find out?
Tell me about the time you saw a documentary that was so crazy you didn't think it was real.
I just rewatched one of my favorite documentaries today, and every time I watch it, I question whether or not it actually happened. The documentary is called Searching for Sugar Man, and it's about a man called Sixto Rodriguez. I had never heard of this man before this documentary, and I had never met anybody who knew who he was before this documentary. Sixto Rodriguez was a Michigan-based musician in the 70s, and although he was incredibly talented, he didn't really get any success in the States. However, somehow, some of his records ended up making it onto some kind of import into South Africa, which at the time was still under apartheid and had every ounce of media completely controlled by the government. And when I say that Sixto Rodriguez exploded in fame in South Africa, I'm saying that he sold more records than Elvis Presley. And he very quickly became deeply influential on the music scene there, as well as this beacon of hope for the generation. If you were to ask any musician in South Africa at the time, they would have said that Sixto Rodriguez was one of their biggest influences. The thing was, nobody knew anything about him. All they had was this record. And like even then, they still found ways to censor Sixto Rodriguez's music. Like there's one song that you just can't hear because it's been scratched out because no one was allowed to listen to it, so it had to be physically scratched out. Like the whole time this is happening, Rodriguez is in Michigan and has absolutely no clue that he is incredibly like A+ list celebrity famous over there. And everybody there just kind of assumes that he's dead because nobody knows anything about him. And so there's tons of theories circulating about like, how did this guy die? Like what happened? So this documentary chronicles these people's search for this man to figure out what exactly happened to him and why nobody else knows about him. So if you have the time, Searching for Sugar Man is the name of the documentary. It's amazing, and his music is absolutely incredible as well. But I still question all the time whether or not it's actually real, because like, how does that even happen? How do you achieve such insane amounts of success and fame and have no awareness of it? Sixto Rodriguez's fame in South Africa is so fascinating to me. This man was in Michigan. Nobody had any idea who he was. He was just a guy that had recorded one record and then nothing ever happened with it. And somehow, by some happenstance, one of his records ended up on an import into South Africa, which was under apartheid. So no information could go in and no information could go out, and everything was controlled by the government. There was no way for Sixto Rodriguez to know about his fame in South Africa because there was no way for anybody to find out anything about him or for like any kind of communication in or out of South Africa to happen. Not only that, but there were different variations of his name credited on the record itself, so nobody really knew what his actual name was. It didn't say anything about where the record was produced or anything. So it took many of Rodriguez's fans a long time to analyze every single word of every lyric of his song. Like the way people were analyzing the lyrics to this man's music to try and figure out who he was and where he lived rivaled Swifties. I'm sorry, it does not even compare to the way that you guys analyze Taylor Swift's music, because there was so little information and such a dedicated fan base, like Elvis Presley level fan base. These were the Swifties. Like imagine if we didn't know anything about who Taylor Swift was, but she still had that level of fame in her music. People would be going insane. That was what was happening. And eventually, South Africa wasn't under apartheid anymore, so people were able to actually start searching for him. And finally, Rodriguez's daughter saw one of these posts, and she was like, oh, fuck, that's my dad. He's just like in Michigan. Like he was just doing carpentry work. this whole time, he was just like a carpenter. And my favorite part of this documentary is how they finally track down this guy. They find out that Rodriguez is alive and well and has no idea that he's been super famous in South Africa this whole time. And like, he didn't have any idea. He didn't make any royalties off of these records because the records that were selling in South Africa were copies of the record that was originally imported. So he had no way of getting the royalties from them. When they finally figured out who he was and that he wasn't dead, out to South Africa, and it was like another universe for this guy and his family. Like, they didn't know what was going on. Like, why are we thinking they got like the A+ celebrity treatment? They're like rolling around in limos. He's playing for sold out stadiums in South Africa. Like, crazy, crazy, crazy. Completely polar opposite of the life he had been living in Michigan. Like, this man was a voice of a generation and had no idea. He had been deeply influential in the music and political scene without knowing about it. Rodriguez unfortunately passed away last year, but I am so, so glad that he got to experience all of that before he passed away, and he got to see the profound impact that his music made on an entire generation of people without having any clue about it. So while he wasn't getting compensated for anything while people were actively listening to his music before they knew he was alive, they did everything they could to make up for it once they figured out who he was. One of my favorite stories, I think about it all the time, and Rodriguez is a huge musical inspiration for me now. I woke up feeling kind of depressed, and I was like, my mom would probably say, "It's a beautiful day, there's no reason to be depressed inside, you should go outside and you'll feel better." And I was like, going outside has never made anybody feel better in the history of the universe. But I decided to try it. Decided to go for a little walk outside, and it's working. I, like most Americans, went through the American public school system as a youth, and every day I'm reminded of how little I was actually taught about world history in any of those classes. I don't remember ever having any dedicated time in class to learning about apartheid in South Africa. I don't remember ever learning about Nelson Mandela. Pretty much everything I learned about South Africa I learned after I graduated high school. I'm by no means an expert on any of this, so if I get anything wrong, please correct me. But this information is relevant, so it's important we understand what apartheid means. Apartheid is an authoritarian political structure based in keeping people separate. So the apartheid in South Africa ensured that the minority white population would have complete political dominance. These apartheid laws in South Africa forbade people of different races from marrying each other, classified people into different racial groups, and dictated people's places of residence based on their racial classification. Between 1960 and 1983, over 3 million black people in South Africa were displaced from their homes and forcibly moved to other parts of the country. And then relocated individuals were stripped of their South African citizenship. And as there was more and more internal unrest in South Africa as people started to resist the apartheid practices of the government responded by becoming more authoritarian and militant. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission found that there were 21,000 deaths in South Africa from political violence, with 14,000 of those deaths happening in the transition period between 1990 and 1994. And more than 22,000 political injuries during that time. It wasn't until 1987 that the South African government started having negotiations with the African National Congress, which was the leading anti-apartheid movement. People were saying that it's apartheid, not apartheid, and I've heard it both ways, so someone correct me in the comments which one is. I started saying it apartheid, but I think I heard a British person say it first, so I don't know. And then in 1990, the prominent African National Congress members such as Nelson Mandela were released from prison. The apartheid legislation was repealed on June 17, 1991, which finally led to multiracial elections in April of 1994. 1994. Okay? I know that we think that the 90s were like a million years ago, but that is like 30 years ago that this happened. Like, both of my sisters were already born before the apartheid legislation in South Africa was lifted. And this is why this is important to be aware of, okay? Because apartheid is still a thing that is being practiced. First of all, the lasting effects of the apartheid legislation in South Africa are still incredibly prevalent. You don't just undo years and years and years of brainwashing and propaganda. It's not like overnight, all of a sudden, there was magical infrastructure connecting all of these segregated communities that previously there was not really any access to. It wasn't like overnight, all of these black people who previously had been completely ostracized were going to be fully accepted by all of the white people and given really good jobs. But it's also important to be aware of because South Africa is far from the only place that has apartheid legislation and practices in place. And we are seeing this in a very specific place right now that I'm not going to say out loud because otherwise this video will not be put out there. So apartheid did not necessarily mean exclusively there was no information going in or out. It was a result of the authoritarian government at the time wanting to prevent any kind of internal uprising against the apartheid practices of the government. Because if you watched my other video about Sixto Rodriguez, there was a significant shift in the political scene once people started hearing protest music. Once people felt like they had a voice and they could actually say something to create a change. If nobody had been talking about the apartheid legislation in South Africa and pressuring them to change it, nothing would have ever happened. Which is why we need to be putting just as much pressure on countries with apartheid legislation today as we did on South Africa. Like pretty universally, we've kind of established that that's not a good thing to be practicing. However, when you are raised in an American education system, or just a system of education that is completely propagandized, that selectively teaches you things and doesn't teach you the things that actually happened in the world, then there's not going to be anything that tells you that these words that you don't know the meanings of are bad. Anyways, I'm not an expert on any of these things. These are just, I really like to read Wikipedia articles. So if I got anything wrong or there's like misinfo in this at all, please let me know and I will take this down. This is just what I know. I feel like I've learned a lot more outside of the school system than I did in it. So, you know those book talk videos that start out as like a normal story time that you think is actually happening until the very end of the video when the person who made the video was like, psych, I actually wrote a book about this. This didn't actually happen, but you can read about it. I fall for those all the time because it's a really effective marketing tactic. Like I love tea and gossip and story times on TikTok. Like they're the #1 thing that I watch on here. So when I get to the end and I'm like, oh my god, I could read a whole book about this like 10-minute video I was super invested in, why not? Anyways, I fell for one of those. I fell for one. I'm never falling for it again. I'm never falling for it again. I see this video of a woman explaining how she fell in love with her husband after she like became a widow or something. And I don't want to put her on blast, so I'm not going to put any like explicit details about the story in here. But it was a riveting story and I was like, wow, I want to read more. This is really interesting. So I bought the book. Tell me why. Nowhere in the original story time did she say that the love interest for this story was her stepbrother. I find out like 2 pages in, this man is her stepbrother. Why wouldn't you say that? Why do you want to help Palestine? Aren't they homophobic? Read a book. Read a book. Read a book. Second of all, I was raised in the evangelical church. I am well versed in conversing with homophobic people should the opportunity present itself. Third of all, are you saying that homophobia is not incredibly prevalent here, where we are, right now? And do you think that those people deserve to have bombs dropped on them? Like, what if they were homophobic? What if they were? What if they didn't agree with my right to marry? Okay, I still don't think that they should have bombs dropped on them and their children and their families and their homes and their farms. I don't give a fuck. I'm sure there are people there who might not agree with me on a base level about some things, but we can both agree that they don't deserve to have bombs dropped on them. Like, for the love of Christ, how low do you think of the queer community that you think that we would be willing to turn our backs on a country in dire need of aid and support just because you have a preconceived notion about their belief system and culture? That is completely wrong. Like, you are both wrong about the Palestinian people and the queer community on an embarrassing level. Anyways, you guys know what to do. This app has put some new rules in place about things that you're allowed to say to incentivize people to do things. I'm literally using such roundabout language that I don't even know if you'll know what I'm talking about, but I have to be super choosy with my words or the video will get taken down. So, you know what to do.
It has been 7 months of hell. I don't believe there's anything comparable to what we're enduring. Even death, in my opinion, would be more merciful. This campaign began out of necessity, to seek a safe place for myself, my family, and to rebuild our lives destroyed by the machinery of Israeli destruction and devastation. Thank you all for the overwhelming love and solidarity. Wow, we are close to 1,000 supporters and donors. This is incredible. I'm grateful to each and every one of you. Unfortunately, my family couldn't escape the war, and we couldn't reach a safe place. For the 8th time, we're fleeing from fire and death. I'm sending you this update to inform you and clarify that my family still needs your help, and every donation, no matter how small, is crucial and greatly appreciated. Every share from you to your friends and followers matters just as much. My family and I are striving hard to achieve the goal of this campaign, and this is thanks to your effort, donations, and solidarity with us. This update comes from Dr. Hisham. He's a urologist, his wife is a dentist, and she was 5 months pregnant when they were first forcibly evacuated. She gave birth to their firstborn son, Jamil, in a tent. Together, we have been able to raise more than $15,000 for this family in just a couple of weeks, and I know that we can work together to achieve their goal of $35,000. I can't tell you to do anything because TikTok will take this video down for trying to incentivize people to spend money, but anything I make from this video is going directly to this family. Thank you for watching this all the way through.
Who was the elementary school teacher who had beef with you for no reason? I'll go first. And before people get mad at me for shitting on teachers, I was a teacher for 5 years, so shut your trap. My 2nd grade teacher hated me, and she let me know. She straight up told me that I was her least favorite student. First of all, like every other 2nd grader on the planet, I was 7 years old when I started in her class. I am very, very tall, and I've always been one of the, if not the tallest person in my class by several inches. And in 2nd grade, I was a full head taller than the next tallest person in my grade. But like it said on all of my paperwork that I was born in 1999. I was 7 years old when I started in her class. She did not believe me. She thought I was like way older than I was, and she constantly put these expectations on me to be way more mature than the average 7-year-old. Every morning we would come into class and she would give us a morning assignment to do. And one morning I came in and she had accidentally given me a different assignment than she gave everybody else in the class, but it was there on my desk, so I started working on it. And this woman barges over to my desk, rips the paper out from under me that I'm working on, and is like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm working on my homework." And she was like, "Do you see? Look around you. What is everybody else working on? Look with your eyes, Emily." Like, makes me look around. And she's like, "What is everybody else working on? Are you working on that?" And I'm like, "You never gave me how am I supposed to be working on what everybody else is working on if you didn't give me a fucking paper?" I can't hold my pens correctly, and I'm ambidextrous, and so I hold my pens like this. And I would switch between my left and my right hands when I was writing. This woman would not let me use my left hand for anything. And if she saw me holding my pencil wrong, she would come and grab my hand and force me to hold it like this. One time, partway through the school day, I started running a fever, but I didn't really know that that's what a fever was because I was like 7 years old. I just thought I was really cold. So I went over to my coat rack and put on my winter coat, and she made me take it off because winter coats weren't appropriate to be worn in the classroom, as I was like shivering. And I was like, I don't feel very well. Can I go to the nurse's office? And she yelled at me for trying to get out of whatever we were doing. And so I looked at her and then just profusely vomited everywhere, like all over the front of the classroom, all over the carpet, all over everything. And she just looked at me and was like, "Go to the nurse." But like the way our school was built was really weird, so all of these campuses were all spread out, and I had to like walk all the way across campus where like the middle school was to go to the nurse's office. And I was like 7, and I didn't know where anything was because I was fucking 7. So I was just lost wandering around the school campus vomiting, and then a teacher came and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "My teacher sent me to the nurse's office because I'm throwing up, but I don't know where it is." One time there was this girl named Kayla. She bullied me so bad in 2nd grade. She was so mean. She was so mean. She made my life hell. She was like one of the main reasons why I switched schools after 2nd grade, because she was so mean. And my teacher had her leave the classroom so that she could call me out in front of my entire second grade classroom and berate me for bullying her because I tried to tell a teacher that she was bullying me and nobody would do anything about it. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and try to trip her. That was my master plan. I was gonna trip her and show her who was boss. And I got in enormous trouble for that, even though she was literally terrorizing me. She was threatening to call the cops on me for being weird. And my second grade teacher witnessed this behavior every single day and did nothing about it. She did not give a fuck because she loved this girl. We had this magnet board where you had like the green, yellow, and red columns next to your name, and if you were bad, you'd have to like move your magnet to like the next color, and if it went to the red, then you had to stay inside from recess. My name was on the red every single day. I wouldn't even have to be doing anything. I would just be sitting there breathing, and she would come over and be like, move your magnet, Emily, you're being an asshole. Why did you go into this profession if you were going to have such enormous beef with an elementary schooler?
Okay, I love that everyone is in a reading slump right now because I'm also in a reading slump. I mean, my reading slump is a little bit different because I still read. I read 50 pages every night before I go to bed. Like, that is something that I've implemented into my reading habits like for a minute now. But like, I'm just reading 50 pages before bed. So like, there are days when like I'll finish a whole, like I'll read more than 50 pages and I'll finish a whole book. I've only read 8 books this month, which sound like a lot, but compared to what I usually read, which is 30 books, like 20 to 30 books, that is not a lot. I am not getting shit done, okay? And like, everyone else catalyst is like, oh, I read a really good book or I read a really bad book. My catalyst is TV, okay? I have watched like 30 movies and probably like 10 TV shows so far this month. So like, obviously I couldn't read a lot of books. Like, I love media consumption as a whole, okay? My favorite form of media consumption being reading. So a lot of the times I will read, just mostly read, and I won't watch any TV or any movies unless like it's a TV show that's coming out weekly because it's easier to keep up with that. So so there's 1 month or a few months throughout the year where I'm just consuming movies and TV shows, and so that's why I haven't read. So I've been having fun. I'm still consuming media. And also a like little loophole I found to that is like reading the books to the movies that I just watched. So like, I watched Bridget Jones' Diary for the first time and then I read the book, or I rewatched Confessions of a Shopaholic and like now I'm reading that. So that helps out a little bit. But like, what's going on in the air that we all have a reading slump right now? Like, what's going on? Talk to me, guys. What's going on? Because